views and opinions expressed by the host and participants are their own and do not reflect the view of the companies they work for.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to My Name is Mario, episode 7, which is going to be probably episode X. I don't really know because it's a little bit different today. I had with me Eve Crevoshay, who's of course a scientist, and she is the launcher of an initiative, a company also called Take This. You can find it at takethis.org. She's a psychologist, and together with the team of scientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, they have analyzed the mental health impact of all these layoffs. And they, of course, one of the main topics together with anxiety and the actual impact of layoffs is also burnout. So they analyze all this data and they try to come up with studies that they can help us if we are experiencing the layoff in first person, if we're seeing that in our team or in a company or someone that it's close to us. So it's a special episode. We're not gonna focus that much on Eve, even though she's a fabulous person and with very interesting topics to talk about. But let's remember what happened in the past few years. It started, let's say, the end of 2021, went on for 2022, and 2023 we reached like a staggering numbers of people being laid off across, all the continents, especially Europe and North America. They have seen something horrific happening, and the fact is that while someone positively thought last year that could be the end or close to the end, well, that was a very bad way of thinking, because this year in 2024 we are in the month of April, and I think we have reached the same amount of layoffs already or even past it. I don't know what are the latest number, but every week, every day there are some news about people being laid off. So this episode is all about that. It's about your mental health, our mental health, what can we do, and especially what's been done, and maybe about us when we're alone, what is the right way of thinking. So I will not proceed any further in talking with my words, but I will leave it to Eve Crevoshay. So help me to welcome her. So stay tuned and enjoy the episode. Good morning, everyone, once again, and let's say hello to Eve Crevoshay.
Very nice to be here.
Yeah. So I always ask this first question: did I say your name correctly, Crevoshay?
You sure did. Yeah, I'm very impressed. Although that is the way us Americans say it. My name is originally Ukrainian from 4-5 generations back, and it's said very differently there. But yes, in the U.S., that is the way it is pronounced and has been for generations. So thank you.
Okay. So your origins are from Ukraine.
Yeah, on my dad's, my grandfather's side, my dad's paternal side, I'm Ashkenazi Eastern European Jewish of a variety of types and flavors, but that's all my background. But my family's all been in the U.S. for multiple generations.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And so the Americans, they rather say Crevoshay with an A at the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I originally thought it was more French, so like
a lot of people do. Yeah.
I think it's an easy mistake to make. No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I grew up on the border between Vermont in the U.S. and Quebec, Canada, which is French speaking, right? And so a lot of people would think automatically that I had a French name. Yeah.
Okay, so Vermont, I never been there, of course. I had no reasons to go to Vermont, but I heard good things. And isn't that the place where recently you could see it from there? When was it? Like recently was this eclipse?
The eclipse?
Right.
Yeah, I was there on Monday. I visited my family, so it was a week ago from the date of this recording, and that we were in the path of totality, and we all stood out. There was snow on the ground, and we were all watching the eclipse, and it was this gorgeous vista. It's very rural there. It was amazing. I can't. It was a one of those peak experiences in life. Yeah, it was great.
It would be too cliche if I would say, "Oh, mamma mia."
Well, I don't know. It was pretty cool.
No, yeah. There is one thing that I really would like to see in my life, and is like the Northern Lights. That's one thing that I really would like to. I would like to do. The problem is that I go often to Finland, which is a country that I love. I have
Eliza
friends
Yopinen
there. I know
is the
many people in the
CEO
video
at
game
Visible
industry
Realms
there.
and an entrepreneur in residence at Signum Growth, bringing over 15 years of experience in leadership roles within the
but you
entertainment
actually
industry.
need to go.
Her career is marked by
Up north.
significant
Yeah.
contributions to gaming, music, and film TV,
It's something that you need to
demonstrating the
organize
key ability to
properly
blend
if you really want to
these
do it the
mediums
right way. But
Notably,
Definitely.
Anyway,
Eliza played a key
so
role
we
in
brought you
creating
here,
and
of course,
producing
not to
Virtual
talk too
Band,
much about like the
Studio
Northern
Killers,
Lights
which
and
has
Eclipse,
seen immense popularity
which is obviously good.
with over 12
This is
Super cool.
this is
This
a special
achievement
episode. I
highlights
think
her
I think I'm
skill
gonna
in
call it
utilizing
eventually. I
new
still need to
media and
decide
social media
about
marketing
episode
to reach
X
a wide
or
audience.
maybe
Her work extends
Layoffs
beyond
episode
music into the
or
realms of
I don't know.
gaming
I will
and
have to
TV, where
find
she's
a
known
proper
for her
name for this.
innovative
But this is a special
developing
episode. So
franchise IPs
while
with a particular
normally
emphasis
we try to
on
discover the
gaming. Eliza
person
has
behind the pro,
collaborated with well-known companies
I
such
think
as
we have a
Side
lot
Games,
of ground to
Ubisoft,
cover,
Titmouse, and Rodeo,
and I would like to
contributing her
deep
unique
dive
perspective and
into
expertise
your
to
experience
various
with
projects.
mental health
Eliza's
in the video
approach
game
to
industry.
entertainment and media is characterized
I
by
also
her commitment to
did not have
exploring new
I don't
ways
have
of
ready
engaging
for this one
audiences
time
and
the
building lasting
bio, like
franchises.
your
Her
bio,
efforts
because
continue to
That's
shape the
okay.
future of
this
how
is a very important topic for me. I've been thinking about that a lot. The idea of doing this episode started when I was having the conversation with Nikolina Finska that I interviewed like 3 or 4 episodes ago, and we've been friends for a long time, and we were sharing our feelings about the current situation, and with all the layoffs and what is the impact that can have on people. And then we were also sharing our experiences, and in particular, she had an experience. So before going into the layoffs and the impact that has on mental health, I would like to explore also with you, if you agree, the field of burnouts, which is a thing that even transcends the layoffs, and when it goes like way behind. That's something that I have experienced myself in a very mild way, simply because I was intelligent enough. I think, not that other people are not intelligent, but I think I'm very good with dealing with my emotions, and I've been seeing so I've been in analysis for a long time, and so I'm very good at recognizing my emotions. Also, personally, I am a person that I'm luckily out of the tunnel, but I have been suffering of hardcore depressions for more than a decade. Now that I have a family, luckily I came out of it, and I can say that it's one of the most beautiful feeling that a human being can feel, the feel of feeling normal, not having that dark passenger constantly being behind your neck, like whistling to your ear that he's always there. And so we were sharing this kind of feelings, and I felt like that this could be a good idea for other people to hear. I'm very happy to share. I'm a person that I'm very extrovertic, so I can talk about my experience. I don't feel I'm not shy, and I'm not ashamed of telling. I don't think there is anything to be ashamed of. At least that's my personal opinion. It's very it's normal to not to feel alright. That's the first thing that I feel like saying. That's the one thing that I learned is come out with your feeling, tell your feelings, and share it. And well, anyway, going into burnouts, there is a video that Nicolina has decided to leave me with, something that she had put into her YouTube channel. She has a YouTube channel where
cool.
she shared her experience. So there is a video that I have of her.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about my own experience with burnout and the symptoms I had. Now, mind you, different people might have different symptoms, so don't take this as, I must have them all, but just as a sort of like helping advice or tool if you think that you're struggling or risking burnout that might help you out. And of course, I'm trying to keep these videos short, so I might not be able to really dwell deep in certain things, but I talk more about it in my podcast if you wanna hear more about my personal journey with burnout in details. But first time I had a burnout, I kind of wasn't even sure what it is. It was in the 90s, and it was while I worked for British government. I'm not sure that burnout was even a thing, but I had a very high pressure job. I was not allowed to take time off when I was supposed to take time off. And I was painfully made aware that I'm not really fitting in because I was a foreigner working for the British government. And all of that piled up, and I started to feel very exhausted. Everything lost joy for me. And this was probably my first burnout. But then I got some time off. I found a cure. I took 2 weeks really nice, relaxing holidays where I didn't do anything. I was just eating fresh food, swimming in a sea, didn't think about work, talk about work. And of course, you feel recharged, you feel better, keep on going back. Studies show that 1 in 3 people have repeat burnout in their life. And I was definitely one of those. I have a personality that I'm an achiever. I'm very curious. I'm overachiever. I want to try things. I want to improve things. I want to do the best I can with my life and with my skills. And that actually made me a bit of a workaholic, especially because I was a woman and an immigrant working in a mostly male-dominated field. So it made it harder for me. So I felt I have to work harder to prove myself. And I kept doing that. But it also brought to this frequent burnouts where I had to take quite a bit of time off to recover. The last time I had a burnout, it was a bit different. For me, the stakes were higher. I was talking a bit more about it in a previous video, that I really felt I became one with the job. There was no separation between me and the work anymore. I realized that I can't sleep. I started to feel guilty for sleeping because I piled up so much work on myself. I made myself a bottleneck in my own company that I felt guilty. I was like, I should actually be doing this, sorting things out. I started to feel really tired. It became harder to focus. I become snappier. So all of you who know me in real life, I'm a relatively easygoing person, but became quite snappy, quite strict about lots of things to myself and to the others. And I became physically sick. There's stress and cortisol piled up, end up with me having a surgery and, losing 2 internal organs. Mind you, I still remember they would take me to the surgery, and I'm still sending an email, and the nurse was like, you can't do this. I was like, I'm just going to send this email and then you can operate on me. It was that bad. It was pretty hard. It was physically hard. It was emotionally hard. It was psychologically hard. And my tricks of taking rest didn't really work.
Phase when she was in Finland, when she was living in Finland, she went through a burnout, of course, from working long hours every day, every week. And that was the root cause, of course, like for everyone, of burnout.
I mean, yes and no. It's interesting, actually, that it's not entirely, and she touches on it in this video. Burnout is not just about overwork. That's an element of it. Like having too much work and spending too much time at work is part of it, but that's only one element of what what causes burnout and how to think about managing it. Because she says instead, she talks about her managing her own relationship to work in terms of not just how much time she spends working, but what she gets out of it, how much control she has, how fair, what her reward is, what the values are that, and some of those values are around work-life balance, right? Or work-life separation, and how much you work. But the values of your workplace actually matter a lot in terms of addressing burnout. So take this, the nonprofit that I run. We do mental health work in games, and we've been talking a lot recently about burnout over the last few years. It's one of the most most requested workshops. It's been some of our most highly rated talks because talking about burnout is dealing with burnout is so common in games. Nicolina's experience is not uncommon. But the thing is to remember, at root, games, people come to games because they love games, right? They want to work in games. And we go to work because we're passionate about it. And the idea of passion as the reason why you work and the reason why you're expected to work hard actually becomes what I call it weaponized. It becomes the thing that the lever that's pressed when bosses and studio owners and people with influence are like, well, if you're passionate about this, if you care about this, you'll work really hard and you'll sacrifice other aspects of your life for this work. But you're doing this work not to benefit you primarily. I mean, you're getting a salary, but it's not your IP, it's not your work, right? And necessarily. And you're probably not getting the reward, either the reward either financially or the recognition or the kudos and internal support that you need. You're working too hard. You don't have enough control over the work environment or the work product, right? Like something you've been working on for 3 months suddenly gets cut from the game, or they're like, oh, no, that's, we decided to rescope, or some weird, random thing happens. And so those are the elements of things that contribute really strongly to burnout. And you think of it as in terms of I'm working too much, but it's all those things. It's all those things.
So it's not just simply working too much. So question, do you think that if the same amount of work was done for a cause that is yours, so not is your own idea, let's say if that was my do you think there are less burnout if people are doing the thing for their own company, for example?
So yes and no. To some extent, when it's your thing and you're passionate about it, that's better. It's better for you, and you're getting direct reward and satisfaction from doing your own thing. However, and this is a really important caveat, we do not do well as humans if we never stop working. And if we don't have separation from work and life. Our brains do not function well past a certain amount of work, and our bodies do not function well without breaks and movement. And and then we become isolated, because what if you dive into something so completely that you neglect friendships, you neglect family, you neglect your own well-being? What are you left with at the end? So this idea that we should be passionate and then work all the time, and that's okay, is generally not true, unless it's in very short bursts. Like the idea of crunch in games, right? Like most people end up crunching to some degree. Not every studio, but most studios end up crunching to some degree right before launch for a month or 2 weeks or something, because there's the oh shit stuff that happens, the bugs that come up right at the last minute. That's totally fine. It's I'm going to do this for a year or 6 months or 2 years, or this is the way we always work. That's what's harmful.
Okay. Well, luckily, like myself as a person, I'm particularly lucky that I never since I started working in the year 2000, never had like well, of course it always happened that there is like the week where you work like the week or 2 weeks or even longer, a little bit longer, but I never I am personally incapable of working longer than 11 hours, for example. Like I am
Great.
incapable.
That's a good self-protective tool you have at your disposal.
Yeah. And I always
Yeah.
try to balance it, even if it happens. Then I always try to balance during the weekend or even like the next day, taking like extra. So, but I know that this is a big thing. So what you were discussing is exactly the problem, of the people that are getting the burnout. Is it's not just the working hours, is also that then it takes away also the social aspect of your life, right? The more you work, the less you spend with your family, with your friends. So that is definitely something that has a strong impact on that. There was I don't know, do you think it's the correct assessment?
The way that you described it, or the way that Nicolina? Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah, I think it's there's also it's the culture of the work environment. It's do you feel like you're part of a community? Do you feel like you have control over what you're doing and why? Can you participate in setting your own goals? Do you share the values of the company, at least to some degree? Those things, that cultural stuff, is as important as the hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So also so especially in the Nordics here in Europe, there is this big idea of cultural fit. So hiring people that
fit with it. So this one is a little bit. I'm glad you brought this up, because this one's a little bit funky. Because it always is, right? Because there's culture fit versus culture add, right? And one of the other things that's really important to games and to game spaces is that we reflect the diversity of the players, that and that we have space for understanding different ways that people show up in the world, because that makes better games that are more accessible to more people, right? It's actually better business. But you can't do that if everybody who works in your studio is exactly like everybody else, that fits exactly the way you expect them to fit. You need to actually say, what are we missing? What are the kinds of perspectives or ways of understanding the world or ways of working that we don't have, that we need? And then how do we bring those people on and support them and create a culture that's more inclusive? Because you can bring people on, and this is hard to do. I have personal experience in knowing that it's hard, but it's you can bring people on and be like, I want you here because you bring a different perspective, and then not create a space that's safe or welcoming for them inadvertently. But if you always hire people who are like you, then you are always going to replicate the same set of biases and expectations and ways of working. And that's not going to make you innovative. It's not going to create better product. It's not going to create more creative games. It's just not. So if you're looking for culture fit, you're going to make the same game over and over again. And for some people, that is, in fact, the business proposition. But if you're trying to make cool stuff that's new and innovative and more creative and that responds to a changing world, you culture fit is a bad way to think about it.
Okay. On this specific thing, there is something that I heard recently. So I was on the phone with a very good friend of mine, and he works in a big company here in Europe. We'll not say even the country, just to, and they're quite big. They've changed recently this strategy on how to. I need to be careful what I say, but no, because otherwise it would be too easy to identify which company and then. But so let's say they've changed the strategy. They always were incredibly careful with the cultural fit, and this company was a little bit of a dream place. Even though it was a huge company, it's still a dream place to work in. You go there, you go to their office, you could breathe, you could smell the nice feeling of everybody being friends, and like, wow, I was always jealous, and,
That's awesome.
and you know, when I was there. Now they changed a little bit the way of doing things, and they are getting people in. They need a lot of people, so they're boom hiring. And he told me that he's a little bit worried about that, because of course they wanted to change, exactly to do what you were saying, which is, let's do more things and different, right? Maybe other people have different. So now they're doing, but he sees already like a little bit of people starting bam 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 bam. And
it takes constant vigilance to do it well, and lots of work. And good company culture, even if it's relatively monolithic, is still not a bad thing. Like, good company culture is good company culture. And any change is hard and complicated. And so doing it with lots of buy-in from the whole team, being like, yes, we all agree that these are values we aspire to, we want to change for good reasons. It's going to be hard. Acknowledge, be transparent about how difficult that process is going to be. These are the tools we need to bring to the table, and understand what those are. And that process will still sometimes not work well or be difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not I'm not going to sugarcoat. Like, these are problems that exist in companies, but they're problems that exist in society. Right? It is complicated to bring different cultural perspectives, different ways of working and being in the world together in one place. That is hard. It creates conflict. Doing it carefully and with intention and with training and with support helps, but it's not without difficulty.
Understood.
Even in a positive culture, it's full of awful landmines in very bad cultures.
Understood.
Yeah.
It's and that, because it's extremely important at this point for me, you know, talking is still about like burnout for a little bit longer, and then we can switch to like the other topic. But this is something that I heard in the last couple of decades happening over and over and over and over in the video game industry. I'm not. So before working in the video game industry, I did many jobs since I'm a little kid. I started working when I was 14 years old. My father had a restaurant, so I was working at the restaurant. First, like washing plates
cool.
and glasses, you know, and all the glasses and everything. Then, you know, I moved into working in the. So as a waiter, blah blah blah. Then I did other things, and then I think the only main industry that I worked before coming to the video game industry was the automotive industry. I was working for the group Fiat, Ferrari, and Maserati as a car designer, and I do not remember people having the issue. So I was wondering if this is specific. Or in the video game industry, we have a particular issue, because like the whole crunch, it's something I always heard, and then I didn't really hear it in the past as much. Is that typical of our industry?
It's not absolutely 100% unique to games. It exists across tech and other places as well. But it is kind of a feature of games, a cultural feature of games. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is that where it's an industry that is fueled by passion, by people who love games, so they want to make games. It's a creative industry. And it's a creative industry without union protection or support, which I think is increasingly relevant to the conversation. Or at least without established union support and structure. You know, like the TV and the film industry have tons of union structure and support around them. They still are difficult industries, but there's a different standard of support around, and a different way of thinking about projects versus studios, right? And and the funding models of film and TV, of other creative industries versus games, are really much more sophisticated and broad. And so the funding model of games is also really tough, which means that people have much less stability and much less predictability around what they think their job is. Like a studio is supposed to be a place that exists forever, as opposed to a project, like a film project that has a start and an end date, and then that you need to go on to the next thing, right? And so there's this when there's these cyclical boom bust situations in games that really actually replicate. A project is over, we don't need all this staff, and people are like, but I have a job, why do I suddenly get laid off all the time, right? And so there's things like that are really funky about games. And there are studios that absolutely have longevity and stability, but the legwork and the sophistication to get there is really a high, right? And there's plenty of studios that don't have that. There's also games is interesting because it started out as, and then continued to be, a very white male culture who was making games and who was playing games, and that has shifted, but the cultural norms inside games they persist. They don't go away. They are
Okay.
And so there's the passion, there's the cultural norms in games around who has typically made and played games, or who we think makes and plays games, and how we think about that, and also the financing and structural issues inside games. And I went to at GDC. I saw a great talk that touched on that. Actually, I wish everybody would get a chance to see. But that was really excellent. And I think and games is it's a huge business now. It's a massive business, so big. And it's really, and it's controlled and it's controlled by actually just a few few platforms, really, and all of which are publicly traded companies, or almost all of which, right? And so it's a very capitalist environment, and a capitalist environment is not kind to people.
It's not kind to people. I do agree with you.
Yeah.
But that's what we wanted. So that's what we need to deal with. Unfortunately, yeah. Okay. There is one last thing. Another friend of mine who didn't want to come out with saying his name, said, please don't say who I am. So don't worry.
Totally understand.
We were having a conversation because I kind of found out that he had this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not an idiot per se, so I kind of figured out.
Yeah.
There was a big so they went through a big release that lasted longer than it should have. Longer working hours, etc., etc. The game goes, boom, launch on the market, and then he disappears. And he's a person that I really like. I write to him once, twice, 3 times, no answers, nothing, and I'm wondering what happened to him, right? And then time goes by. I give him time. Then we have like a little bit of conversation. It's like, yeah, exactly, that's what happened. And it's like. He said, I think the most interesting thing is the double-sidedness of our type of work. I love my job and my team and most of my tasks, but it's something else that drives us to become tired and worn out. I think it has something to do with the pressure we feel, as if we always have to lay out the tracks in front of us as soon as we're doing something.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, what I hear in that is actually that he loves doing he loves making games, but he's not a game director, I'm assuming, or like kind of somebody who's crafting an entire vision. And so he has not a whole lot of control, right? He is not he's not able to scope out something. He gets dropped into something and he has to figure it out as he goes. And like, the truth is, games are complicated and complex, and scoping and managing scope creep is really hard and takes diligence. But if he's in a situation where he has some measure of control, he's got a team, he's got tasks, and he's got a vision for a discrete piece, that's great. But that doesn't mean that he has control over how that fits in a game or what it's supposed to look like at the end, right? And he doesn't feel integrated into a larger vision, and he's not getting the chance to really he's not getting the chance to really like be part of creating that vision with support, right? He's like, oh gosh, I have to, and I think that's what I'm hearing from him. It might also be that he's trying to talk about like, I have to have my career mapped out, and I don't know what the career path looks like. And that's true. We don't really have, because the industry isn't that old, we don't have a sense of what career pathing is in games. You know, where do you go from X to Y to Z? What are the things that get you the experience and the qualifications that allow you to do the next step? What in studio, you know, in an environment where games get canceled or people get laid off before they get access, before their names appear on credits or they're eligible, you know, you can't ever describe a game that you've launched, right? You can't ever put your name onto a title because there've been 5 canceled titles that you've worked on, or you got laid off before you were eligible to be put on the credits. That kind of stuff, that changes the ability of people to build a career path that feels like it has logic to it, or like it has predictability to it. So I think there's 2 possible answers. I'm not sure which one your friend is talking about, but both of those are about this is a really difficult and very volatile industry. How do you participate in it in a way that feels sustaining and supportive?
Yeah. Well,
and that can be hard.
It is rough. I can imagine.
And it's easy from my position to be a real downer about this, to really be like, it's hard and it sucks, etc. And that's often true. And as we get into a conversation about layoffs, that's going to be, more true. But the truth is, there are places where people and studios where people are building really thoughtful career progressions, and where people are making different choices about whether or not someone can claim experience or claim credit in a game, or identify as participating in something. And and people have gotten better at scoping games, not all the time, but often, right? And we still hear disaster stories, but we also hear stories of games that are just great, and they're scoped well, and they're planned well, and people are developing production expertise and design expertise that's really intentional. And so it is getting better, but we're not there yet universally.
Yeah, absolutely. My support goes like to all the people that are suffering from burnout, and my only suggestion would be, I don't know I'm gonna leave the stage to you to give like a couple of suggestions if you have one or something. But for me, it's just, that's what I have learned. I know that not everyone has the same situation, but that's the one thing that I have learned, like, see it when it's coming. Like, there is a moment for everyone where you know that something is off. This is not natural. There is a sense of what is natural inside your brain you feel it. It's anthropological. You need to, you feel it, you know it.
Yeah, and actually that, I appreciate you saying that, because there's something that's really interesting about burnout is that burnout can be a contributing factor to burnout. And you talked about your own depression. A contributing factor to burnout can be a previously occurring mental health diagnosis of your own, right? You could be having a set of needs yourself, and that contributes to workplace burnout. But workplace burnout can also cause you to become depressed, become anxious, develop other mental health challenges. And we don't always know how that works. We have some ideas, but we don't always know. So if you're a manager, be on the lookout for people who are more cynical suddenly, more detached suddenly, more exhausted, because they are probably experiencing burnout, and it's your responsibility as a manager to facilitate, to support them. And if you are feeling that way about work, the cynicism, the detachment, the sense of I can't do anything and I'm not effective, and that really bone deep exhaustion, then yes, talk to somebody. Talk to your team, to your manager, get support. This is a real diagnosis, and you can get you can get accommodations, you can get time off work because you are burnt out, and that's a legitimate reason. That's a 1,000% legitimate reason to take time off of work and do some work, both in terms of the structure of your workplace environment and the structure of your own life to support yourself. Burnout is not, you can't self-care your way out of burnout. You can't do all the work yourself. Burnout is a structural issue. It's an issue with the way work is structured and how it fits with you. And if those things don't gel, then it is absolutely within your rights, and you should expect that you can get accommodation and support for switching that. Whether it's the team you're on, the type of management support you get, the type of tasks that you undertake, all of that. That is something you can get help for. And it is your company's responsibility to help you, because it is in part their responsibility to fix the situation and their fault that it happened.
I think that the behind not going and asking for help, there has to be the fact that, okay, we're working. There is this whole situation. If I now ask for a break right now, when they mostly need my help, my work, my labor. So, I think that's probably the conundrum.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is,
right?
that if you get a diagnosis of burnout, then that's medical leave. That's medical leave, and you are entitled to that. In almost every country where games are made, you are entitled to that time off and that space and that support and the benefits that are related to it. And most companies will take that seriously, and they'll get it, and they will have to. So remember that if you get COVID or the flu or you need major surgery, you get medical leave. Burnout is like that. Burnout is not different from that. It happens in our head, and we have stigma around it, but you deserve and are entitled to medical leave for something like burnout or depression.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear the word depression, I always feel like something warm comes into my chest. It's a delicate topic for me, of course, because I suffer from that for years. It was for too long. Yeah. And it's definitely a matter. So that's why, for example, there's one thing I already talked about this once, about the fact whenever I hear someone say, "Oh, today I'm a little bit depressed," it's like I feel a little bit of rage inside,
right?
Simply because I try to be as calm as possible. Try to say can you please do not use that word? If you're sad, it's sad. It's not the depression. It's a medical condition.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I tried not. Sorry if I say it. I hope you don't feel attacked by me. But it's very. I think it's very important to use the right terminology.
It is. Yeah. We have a guide on our website, takethis.org, about how to talk about mental health. I think it's in our FAQ section, because it really is easy for people to kind of use these terms casually, and these experiences are nothing casual. being depressed is a very serious thing, and having clinical level diagnoses, yeah, they're profoundly different from being like, oh, I'm having anxiety today, you know. Yeah, you can feel anxious or you can feel very worried, but that's different from anxiety is a condition I live with on a constant basis, or depression is a condition I live with that shapes everything about my life. And so developing a literacy around mental health terms and diagnoses is good for people, because it will help you understand what others are going through, develop that empathy, and also not really trivialize them, because they're different. Yeah, because that's essentially what happens there, is that you get and you're like, no, my life was profoundly impacted in every way by depression. It wasn't just that I was feeling sad.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's a little bit of a stigma, right? People think that it's like sort of like a strong sadness. Yeah. You know, come on, step out, go to the gym, right? Go to the gym, you will feel better.
Yeah.
And how many times I heard it, right? Come on, let's go do something. Let's go for like painting something. It's like, no, dude, no, it's not exactly how.
I mean, community support is important to recovering from depression, but it's not one thing that's going to snap you out of it. Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, so, well, thank you for the conversation about the burnouts. Once again, something that I haven't, felt myself, but I've always heard so many people suffering from it, and I wanted to know a little bit more. So thank you for all your insights.
My pleasure.
That's actually what you do normally, right? How big is the team? Do you have a team of people? Like how many people are in your? Tell me something about like
the organization.
Take this, right?
Take this.
Take this.
Take this.
Take this.
Not take two. Not take that. But take this. So the organization is 11 years old, and we have a team of about 10. Some of whom are very part-time, but most of the team. Not me, but most of my team are clinicians. They're mental health professionals of some sort. They provide counseling, they do research, and their focus is, we have folks with a specific focus around burnout and interest in online interactions and toxicity and dark participation in games and media effects. We have interest in tabletop games and using games therapeutically. We have people who have a real expertise in community interaction in online space and game design. And so everyone is thinking about how do we make games the best place they can be that benefits the well-being of the people in the who make and play games. And then how do we make games that benefit the world, that are positive forces in the world, and that increase well-being? Whether that's just through the joy of play and just through safe online interaction, or it's intentionally through the design of mental health games. And so we think about games pretty broadly, and we do it always from a perspective of well-being and mental health. And it's really cool. I really love the work.
I saw you have I went through the list of like some of the doctors that they work with you. I see all incredibly competent people, all of them.
They're amazing. I have a fantastic team, and it's a real honor to work with them. Yeah.
Oh wow. You see, I probably will not have burnout, hopefully.
I mean, even I can get burnout, We go through tough times. And let me tell you, actually, at the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody needed our support, that's when I got burnt out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was a tough time. But we are on the other side of that now, which is good.
Well, luckily. The next topic is layoffs, right? And the impact that they have on our mental health. So, to be honest, I don't even think it needs an introduction, this topic. I really don't think there is an introduction. There is a need for an introduction. But, just to, the numbers are crazy, and it looks like this year is gonna be worse. So it started everything, let's say 2022, not even 2023. Started 2022 being, giving strong signals that there was a state of reassessment of the industry. Continued in 2023, and we all thought that those numbers were quite insane. But what happened at the beginning of this year, I think in the last 3 months, we already got close to the numbers of the whole 2023. I'm not sure. Recently, I just missed the data. I think I actually have the data, but kind of like miss it, and now I didn't want to have like papers to just look at it. But I think we're really getting close, or already past it. I don't remember, but
I know that we have, since 2022, like since the layoffs started in the second half of 2022, we've had over 25,000 people laid off in the industry.
25,000.
Yeah, that's in the last 2 years, basically. The numbers at the beginning of this year were very high, and I do think there's still some fallout coming. There's still some stuff happening, and it's disappointing, because what happened is that the industry grew a lot during the pandemic, and analysts and people budgeting and making projections were rewarded for forecasting that kind of growth was going to persist post-pandemic, when we all knew that was a blip. And there's some other factors there, but as I was talking about earlier, this is a capitalist, industry and with a lot of large publicly traded companies and a lot of VC-backed ventures, and that kind of growth is rewarded on the front end, even if it's not really attainable. And so here we are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some other blips in that, like the Embracer Group fallout and a couple of other specific things and some bubbles that popped. But yeah, that's the big thing.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, Riot Games also had like a big thing. Unity, even Unity also was crazy numbers.
Really?
I don't know, like Epic Games and
Sony,
it's something.
Ubisoft, did we say they were early on? Yeah, it's everybody. Everybody has done this at this point.
Everybody,
Yeah.
even smaller company, even the company I work for currently at the beginning of the year, we had some layoffs. And it was, for me, it's very, and I can feel that, there's the one thing that I think I read, I don't know if on your website or somewhere else, this without even getting into the people affected directly by the layoffs, the survivors, right?
Yes. Yeah. You may have read it. May have read it on our website, because that is a big deal.
It's a big deal, because I think, like, look, it's here directly taken from your website, saying impact on developers. Among 3,000 surveyed developers, 35% reported being impacted by layoffs. So 3,000 surveyed, of course. 35% reported being impacted by layoffs. 7% were personally laid off. 17% saw layoffs within their department, and 11% reported layoffs in other teams. Which make it, if math, I'm not that great in math, but it makes it like 68% of the people surveyed, they actually had something to do with that. So which is massive. It's massive. 68% is like seven people out of 10. They actually have seen it, or they've been laid off, and it's huge.
It is huge, and it's relentless, because it just keeps happening. It's like there was a period at the beginning of this year when it was every day. It was like, oh, what's going to happen today? Which studio is going to close, or which group is going to see layoffs, and that's really crushing, and it creates a sense of uncertainty across the entire industry, where you're like, even if my job is okay today, or my job is okay for the next 6 months, like, what does that mean for my future? What does that mean for the future of my game? Like, all kinds of big questions that just they don't go away because it's so pervasive across the industry, and that's really hard.
There is another question that also is stored there, which is, when is going to be my turn?
Yes. Yeah. What's next?
That's quite. It really gives a sense of anxiety. That's what I kind of heard, and that's what people are saying. The thing is that, okay, those have been the layoffs. Is that over? Apparently, it's not even a certainty. Okay, we got rid of this 1,000 people, so that doesn't mean game over. Okay, oof, I'm safe. Everyone feels okay. Let's start looking around. Let's start looking at options. And there's a sense of anxiety that the survivors have. That it's quite. Of course, I don't want to make it about like the survivors, because they're real, people that we need to talk about that want to be laid off. But
it's I mean, it can be really awful for people who are laid off in this environment, because it's not like you can go get another job really easily right now. Not everybody's hiring. There are places that are hiring, and there are a few roles people have been able to find, but those are much harder to find, and a lot of people are leaving the industry. And that is sad from two perspectives. One, it's sad from the perspective of those folks don't get to make games anymore. And two, it's sad because it's a brain drain from the industry. And it may be a brain drain that we take a while to recover from. We already had really high rates of burnout and people leaving the industry at the like 7 to 10 year mark, because they really couldn't take it anymore for reasons of burnout that we just discussed. But that thinking about that in terms of when that happens at scale because of layoffs, what does that mean for our the expertise that we lose, the experience that we lose, the subject matter knowledge? Just that feels really sad for the industry. Never mind the people and the experience that they're having. And there was an added interesting wrinkle that happened because of the timing of the pandemic and work from home, and then slow return to work and return to office, even hybrid situations, that there were some situations where people had just moved for work because studios were starting to go back in person, and then they got laid off very shortly thereafter.
And there is also like what is really unsettling is the how many people actually got laid off after their company. They just communicated a great result that they had the year before, right?
Yep.
And then, or there is even this, the story that I saw when someone actually posted a picture with the CEO or something of the company, and then actually have at the party or sort of something like that, and then got laid off like 1 hour later with an email.
That was the Sony London studio. Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah. There's been so the disconnect, especially in large publicly traded companies, the disconnect between earnings reports and budget decisions is really profound, and that can be really, really hard to stomach when it happens to you or to people or to your colleagues. Yeah. Because what they're doing is they're thinking about, we're still making a lot of money, but we're looking 1, 2, 3 years out and projecting, and we're not going to make as much money, so we're going to make these cuts now. And on some level, this is a theory I have. It may be bogus, but I think this is the moment when everybody's doing layoffs, so there's some cover for it. So people are like, this is the time to do them.
Okay. Do you want to, so here's the big question, that's as simple as that. What's the actual impact? What have you seen in the last year and a half in the impact that has on people and the mental health?
Yeah. So you talked about one already, which is the sense of anxiety or uncertainty. So uncertainty is really hard for people to manage, and it's one of the things that is hardest to deal with on an ongoing basis. And one of the things we talk about a lot at Take This is how to manage uncertainty. And one of the best ways to do that is to acknowledge it, to be transparent. Sometimes you can't say, yes, we're going to have layoffs in 6 months, or you can't say, no, we're never going to have layoffs. You have no idea. Those conversations either can't be had publicly in the company, or there's no way to answer them. So what you have to do is help people sit with, yeah, this is a very difficult time. We don't know what's happening. Sitting through this is hard. I understand how you feel. And this is the amount of certainty I can give you. And it's really important that managers and leaders and heads of studios and companies do as much of that legwork as possible to reduce the amount of anxiety that people feel around uncertainty. It is the responsibility of leaders to say, and Take This is going through this right now because we're like everybody else in the industry, and because of the situation, we're having a funding crunch. And so we're facing some really tough budget decisions if we don't raise more money. And there was a point where I said, this may happen. Then there was a point where I said, this is going to happen. And then there was a point where I was like, I think this is how much we need to raise. And here's the moment where I'll be able to tell you with more certainty whether or not we've accomplished that goal. And it was a really difficult process of managing how much information I provided out as a leader, when I provided which type of information, and how I answered questions. But the intentionality with which I did that was really essential. And people still are experiencing uncertainty and anxiety around this for obvious reasons. I can't fix that, right? So acknowledging and being transparent about what you can and can't say, and being as empathetic as possible, that's how you help people with that. We've tried to highlight some examples of good ways to do layoffs. There's good and bad ways, and there's a couple of companies that have done it really quite well, like as well as it can be done. One of those was League of Geeks, a small studio, and one of them was Riot Games. Actually, they did a pretty intentional job of crafting the way they did those layoffs. It still doesn't change the fact that they suck, but it provided concrete benefits to people in specific ways, and was very, very clear about what those were and what those weren't, and also provided ways to help people kind of offload and process.
Okay.
Like Riot kind of shut down external comms for a day because they were like, people need this time. Yeah.
That's actually quite, great you need to do what you need to do in that case,
yeah.
But like handling that way, at least let's say it's elegant. I think that's a kind of adjective that I would use. It's elegant.
It's compassionate. I think
exactly.
I would say it's like recognizing that you're laying people off. They have feelings, they have needs, they have lives, they have families, and like treating them with as much compassion, as possible. Like League of Geeks was like, we're still going to do profit sharing with former employees who are laid off, as for the existing game. That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah. So that's a one good. There was another company that you mentioned before that I didn't hear of before. Before Riot Games, you mentioned
it's
another.
League of Geeks.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And they're still struggling. It's still hard, but they really did it with as much thoughtfulness and as much care as they possibly could. And they were thinking first of themselves as a community of people, and second as a business. And they still had to make a business decision. It's not like they could just, walk away from it. And that's but they did it with care. Yeah. And so those models, and they were public. That was the other thing. They were not just transparent to their teams about that. They were public to the world about what they were doing and why. And that's good. That's really good.
Okay. Well, it's good
Yeah.
to hear that there are actually positive example, like virtuous
Yeah,
examples.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and like this doesn't always apply. Riot had a brand new CEO when layoffs happened, so it wasn't clear that this made sense. But like, often in big companies, like leaders should take pay cuts or waive bonuses or something. Like the pain of this process should go to the top.
Good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Didn't even think
Yeah.
about that until now, but yes, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I don't know if this is something you surveyed, you felt, you heard, but I guess this could be probably a very good reason for anger or resentment. Probably. I mean, if you're laying off like myself and another 10 people from my team, are you also doing the same up at the top, like with the bigwigs?
Yeah. Like, is there a level of responsibility and recognition that this is going to hurt? Like, it's going to hurt. It's always going to hurt leaders and people with status less to begin with. And so, like, is there some level of like concrete recognition of that in the process of making these decisions? And you don't see it in corporate America for sure, but it would be nice, and it is an appropriate part of these kinds of processes in some cases. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we can only imagine what people are feeling after being laid off, and but have we seen? I don't know if you surveyed that too. Have you seen a surge in requests for medical, mental medical help, or?
So the surveys we did were really around the demographics of who was laid off, because we were looking at issues of race and age discrimination and gender discrimination, which there is some indication of that that those populations are more highly represented in layoffs.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, before we continue, we're talking about. So, you have surveyed the United States or North America.
So our survey was not just North America, and there was one that we did, and there's one that Code Coven did. Code Coven is based out of the UK, and both of those surveys, which were not solely UK and US based, but were that they were more heavily weighted that way, indicated that there were higher rates of layoffs among people of color, people of marginalized genders, and people who are older. Yeah, which is not a surprise, but it's like when you see the numbers, you're like, ugh, great, that sucks. I think so that's the case. We do know from previous research, not specifically in the game industry, we do know from previous research that like layoffs cause mental health challenges. For people who leave, it can feel like it's easy for people who've been laid off to think that it's their fault that they were laid off. It's not. If you're fired from a job because you did something wrong, that's probably your fault, but a layoff, that's a very different thing.
Mm-hmm.
And being laid off is really out of your control. It has very little to do with your job performance, and is those feelings of hopelessness and frustration and like guilt and like culpability. They're easy to show up, but they're not accurate. They're not true. And so it's really important when you get laid off to find ways of supporting yourself and reminding yourself that your work, this is not a reflection of your work. This is a reflection of larger forces at play.
It's hard to digest that, though.
Yeah, I know. I totally get
Hard
it.
to digest.
I get it.
I would never feel that is because like if you lay off me and not the person next to me.
I understand.
I mean, it goes without
But-
saying. It's like, it's. I
Yeah,
would feel
yeah.
okay. I didn't do enough.
But that's not true, because if they have to make some choices, sometimes they're arbitrary, sometimes they're based on tenure. How long have you been there? Sometimes they're based on random bits of information that have nothing to do with you. Sometimes you get paid too much. Sometimes they just have to flip a coin. I mean, it can be very arbitrary, these layoffs. And they may also be like, this person is really good at X, but we need Y more, so it doesn't matter, even if they're awesome. Like, because the decisions we're making are about this specific game at this specific moment. It's just, it's so arbitrary, layoffs. And they suck, and it's not your fault.
Tell me if I'm saying something wrong. Well, I tell you, at least from my point of view, is not wrong, because that's the way I would feel. Despite myself being like a great supporter of all the minorities, always been fighting up front, and but as a okay, it's really, I don't know where to start, but it's hard to say. I feel that the pressure that there is on myself, and I'm sure there are a lot of thousands of fathers or family guys out there that have been laid off. Is that there is this huge sense of, I need to deliver, I need to bring home food. Or as we say in Italian, bread. In Italian, we go for bread. It's the most valuable thing. You need to bring bread on the table, something like that. So, the sense of failure, and not even just professionally, but it's more about the sense of, I'm not good enough as a father because I didn't manage to keep my job. I'm not, and the search for a job nowadays can take long. So there is the initial feeling that is terrible, and the continuous feeling that you are not capable of finding another job. And I read on LinkedIn last week another guy that says, I went to another, to countless interviews, and I have been rejected everywhere. And despite and for myself, I think I would be the typical, I'm 46 years old. If I would lose my job, that would take like a long time. I am sure I would, the feeling I would have, probably would fall into depression again after 7 years of not being there anymore. I probably do, because the sense of not being good for your family, that's the way that kind of pressure that society is always put on me. In the sense that I was brought up this way, right? My family brought me up.
Absolutely.
The family, you are the man, and you need to do this, right? Irregardless of me thinking that there is no difference between a man and a woman, that's what I say, that's what. But the way I've been, it's intertwined in my brain and heart and guts that I am that person, and I need to deliver. And if I don't do it, irregardless, right, of what I think about the world and gender equality, etc.
I'll say there's two things that I'd say. One is, duh. I mean, I'm married to a man who has the same kind of feeling, right? It's totally normal to feel that way and to feel that pressure. Those expectations, on some level, they're real. Like, we need our families to be fed and housed and clothed and taken care of, right? But on some level, they don't match. They're from a very much simpler time, and they don't match a capitalist environment where your job is really at the whim of forces so much larger than your own capability to provide and do good work. They have nothing to do with your own work ethic and your own skill and your own relationships, right? Especially when it comes to layoffs. And at that point, there is, it is not a personal failing. to be in a situation where you're in an industry that's just laid off 25,000 people and you can't find a job. That's kind of that's a situation that a lot of people are experiencing right now. It's not weird. It doesn't make it easy. It doesn't magically give you money, but it's the reason why a lot of people are leaving the game industry, because they need a job. They need a job. They need to provide. And it's not just men. Men may have a family man of what you're describing yourself. It's not just people like you, although you may have a more challenging time kind of squaring it with your sense of your image. It's everybody who's been laid off. People who are single and need to, and have no support system and need to support themselves, and like make sure that they don't have any fallback. They don't have a spouse who's working. They don't, there's all kinds of contexts in which this eats away at people's sense of identity and themselves. And it's a point where you notice how powerless you are inside the environment, and that's really hard. And so I guess my approach to this is to validate that this is a moment when your sense of self is going to be threatened, and your sense of efficacy in the world, and your sense of like your ability to do the things that you think are your responsibility, they're going to be threatened. That's hard. But it's not your fault you're in this position. It's really not. It's not your friend's fault. It's nothing, this guy that you saw on LinkedIn, it's not his fault.
Yeah.
This is a shitty time to try and find a job in this industry.
I do agree. It's it's terrible, and it's also normal, as you were saying before, to start considering also like alternative routes to just
no job. And I say this a lot to early career folks and students in this industry. No job in this industry is so important and so fabulous that it's worth sacrificing everything for. There's no job.
Yes, of course that it goes for everything. The problem is that the difference between the video game industry and every other industry is that no one arrived here by chance.
No, that's true.
And that's the thing.
Is absolutely true.
You get into the pharmaceutical industry, you get your you started, you kind of like found this job, you are there, and then it's fantastic, you make a lot of money, you have good people around, blah blah blah, but you ended up there. Finance is the same, fintech, everything. I don't think that there is a 14 years old kid that says I want to be in fintech and I don't think it exists. I don't think it exists, right? So you end up being there, and it's awesome. But in video game industry, you choose it. Like I did. Yeah. I remember I was living in Brazil. I was still like in the automotive industry. I decided to come back to Europe because Brazil was too dangerous. And I said, you know what? No, enough with that. I want to go back to Europe. I come back to Europe, and I'm passing in front of this. Like it was something called Manpower, one of those agencies called Manpower, very famous here in Europe. And I just passed in front of it, it's like game tester. Like I just passed by, like in a movie, like passed by, and then like
that's really funny.
Couple steps back, and it was like, I love video games. I've always loved video games since I was a little kid. So you end up being there. You don't end up being there, but you decide to be here, and that's what is also very hard for us.
It is.
It. First of all, it's not easy. At 46,
right.
I don't know which other industry I could land. But like also deciding to imagine there is a double sense of failure. If I end up in the fintech and then I decided to switch into pharmaceutical, it's like it's another job, right? I just need another job. But here is like I took this decision because I wanted to be here, because I love it. I love the people. I love video game. I love everything. So double feeling of failure, and therefore multiplier sense of anxiety and all those rippling effect on your mental state.
You have to do a lot more work in games to understand the context of how games work and the economics of it, and this myth of passion and the weaponized passion and the propensity for burnout. You have to do a lot more of that, like conscious processing, to figure out whether or not it makes sense to try to stay in games, or to contextualize feeling bad about leaving. It's just more work, and you have to do that. You have to take responsibility for your own well-being, and you have to take responsibility for understanding the forces that are larger than you, that are outside of this. I love this and I want to be here, because your life is not just video games. Your life is not just this job, and you have to remember that, and you have to think about all the other forces at play and all the other opportunities. This industry will grow again. You could probably come back. This industry will always be here for you to play in. You can do this as a side gig, as a job, as a fun thing, as a project. You may rediscover an amount of joy in doing things for fun, making games for fun on the side that you didn't have working in a big company. Like, it's important to do the work to give yourself permission for that kind of thing.
Very valuable point of view. Thank you very much.
Happy to provide it.
What kind of, is there any, just to conclude also, I would like to offer people, like, do you have like some links that you can share with us that I can put at the end of the episode here in the description? Something that could help? Do you have like a couple of articles or a couple of studies that you run, or a couple of associations that you should reach out to in case you need that? And I don't know anyone who would need support, mental support.
I do. I have, we have, so our homepage is a great place to start, takethis.org. We have mental health crisis and resources available really easily. We have a widget on our website that provides access to warm crisis lines and emotional support hotlines worldwide, and it's vetted and updated. If you go to takethis.org/burnout, we have a huge number of resources there. There's burnout for content creators, burnout for gamers, and there's a bunch of game specific resources there. We also have a TakeThis.org Discord community if you're looking for a warm, fuzzy, supportive environment online. It's one of the sweetest places around.
Okay.
And coziest places. I encourage, those are probably great places to start. We also have, and it's pinned on our front page right now, but we have a mental health and layoffs article. That's a great place to start as well. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Eve, I think we have, it was beautiful to have you here.
Likewise.
I can tell everyone that, of course, feel free to reach out to me if you need her contact. If there is something you want to discuss with Eve, of course, we can share her contact. If you need help, request help within your organization. If you feel a sense of anxiety, request help in your organization, or look for help outside. If you've been laid off already, of course, also do not hesitate to mention the type of feelings that you have. And, stop me when I say something wrong, Eve, but I would say the important thing, if you've been laid off and you feel that anxiety that I know that you are feeling, talk about it. Don't keep it. I know, as we tend to be told to keep it for ourselves, to be strong, to put a mask on our face and not to show our emotions, not to show our weaknesses. But we are weak, and it's okay to be like that, because that's a huge thing. It's one of the worst things that can happen to you. And if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you have to talk to someone, whether it's your family, or at least discuss the type of emotions that you have. It's natural to feel bad, not having the same mean of substance that you could have, that you had before, it's something that touches us inside, because we are built with this stereotype or with this idea that we need to provide. We need to be always performant, right? That's what the society told us. We need to be performant. We need to perform, and that's a part that is anthropologically not correct, and it's correct to feel bad if something like that happened. One more thing that I would like to tell everyone before I say goodbye to Eve. Personally, there is also the intention to create another special episode if I will receive enough requests or suggestions to still on this. Maybe if you feel you want to come out and leave a video or being interviewed, or the idea is to put like many videos together of people that want to live their experience, want to live like what they went through, and maybe we can put them in a mix. It's still like we're still thinking about what to do it together with Nicolina, but the idea is to do something else so that you will see, so that people will be able to see that there are others that are feeling the same. So it's not only you, that we are part of a community almost of people that feel that way, and it's okay to feel that way.
Thank you. I really hope that you're able to do that, because I think the more we have open conversations about this stuff, like this conversation, the more people feel validated, and the more people feel like they're not alone, and that's really important. Yeah. So thank you.
No, thank you for coming here.
My pleasure.
Well, it's something that
it's not a mental health conversation. It's somebody doesn't get teary-eyed at some point.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
No, so
thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate the fact that you decided to give this 1 hour and a half. I will try to cut the video short to as long as 1 hour. It's gonna be impossible, but this was important. It was important to me. I'm sure it's important for many people that will watch it. Eve, keep doing what you're doing with your team, and extend my gratitude to all the people that work around you in your team. You're doing an excellent work, and thank you for doing it. We definitely need more of that. And well, thank you.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.
So this was like all the time that we had for today. This was episode X. I don't know yet what number or what kind of letter I want to use, but my name is Mario, and I hope I will see you next time. Goodbye.